At my sister's funeral, I got a message that changed everything. Please stay with me as I tell you my story. And before we begin, don't forget to support our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing. Your support keeps stories like this alive. The sky wept that afternoon. Rain pelted down in heavy sheets, as though the heavens themselves were mourning. Black umbrellas dotted the cemetery like bruises, and the sound of shovels striking wet earth echoed across the field. Each thud of dirt on polished wood felt like a nail driven straight into my heart. They said the woman in that casket was my twin, Elena Brooks. They said my other half was gone forever. I stood at the edge of the grave, my hands buried deep inside my coat pockets, trying to breathe through the knot tightening in my chest. My name is Maya Brooks, 34 years old, born and raised in Ashland, North Carolina. Until that afternoon, the hardest thing I had ever endured was surviving the wreckage of my parents' broken marriage. But this was different. As the pastor spoke words of farewell, my phone buzzed inside my pocket. My first thought was to ignore it. It felt wrong to check messages at my sister's burial. But the vibration wouldn't stop. Finally, I glanced down, my vision blurred by rain. It was a message from an unknown number. I'm alive. Don't trust our parents. My knees nearly buckled. My throat went dry. If my sister was alive, then who were we burying? And who had set this nightmare in motion? To explain how I ended up at a graveside staring at a message that split my world in two, I need to take you back to when Elena and I were just little girls trying to survive a house too small for hope. We were born on a chilly November morning in 1991 at St. Vincent's Community Hospital. I came first just 9 minutes before Elena. I never let her forget it. Our father, Richard Brooks, was a pipefitter who spent more on beer than on bills. Our mother, Denise, worked double cashier shifts that left her tired, bitter, and sharp-tongued. They had married too young, too poor, and by the time we came along, love had dried up into resentment. Our house on Birchwood Road leaned with secrets. Winters meant shivering under coats indoors. Summers meant flies in the kitchen and arguments in the living room loud enough to rattle the thin walls. From the very start, Elena and I only had each other. She was the dreamer, the one who painted our gray life with color. I was the shield, the one who stepped in when voices turned sharp. One Christmas Eve, when we were 8, Mom and Dad had one of their worst fights. Glass shattered, doors slammed, and we huddled under the crooked little tree. No presents, just a couple of stale peppermints from a neighbor. Elena's eyes glistened as she whispered, "Did Santa forget us?" I wanted to cry too, but instead I lied. "No, he's just late. But don't worry, I'll be your Santa." That night, I snuck outside, collected smooth stones from the creek, dried them on the radiator, and scribbled flowers and stars on them with crayons. The next morning, when I handed them over, she hugged me tight and whispered, "You're the best sister in the world." That smile carried me for years. By 12, we were already hustling. I delivered newspapers at dawn while Elena babysat the neighbor's twins. We stashed our few dollars inside an old coffee tin hidden in the closet, half for school supplies, half for small treats on sweltering days. On the worst nights, when the shouting downstairs threatened to split the house, we dragged a dresser against our door and hid under quilts. I whispered promises into the dark. One day, we'll have a place of our own. No shouting, just peace. She would nod, wiping tears, and add her own dreams. A bookshelf that's mine, a window seat where I can read. By high school, our paths had already started to branch. Elena devoured library books and scribbled in journals. I learned to fix bikes, patch engines, and survive the streets. She taught me fractions with pennies. I taught her how to stay calm when the river's current dragged too strong. Once, when she slipped and nearly drowned, I pulled her to shore. She clung to me, gasping, and whispered, "You saved me." And in that moment, I knew she wasn't just my sister. She was my reason. At 18, the road forked for real. Elena earned a scholarship to Everett University in New Orleans. I stayed behind, picking up shifts at Ashland Freight and Auto, sending her money for books whenever I could. She called on Sundays, her voice bubbling with stories. "Maya, New Orleans smells like spice and rain. I walk by the river and imagine you beside me. I smiled, but worried the distance might stretch our bond too thin. Then came a name that would change everything. Adrian Cross. He's in med school, she said shyly. From Charleston. His family owns a clinic. Maya, he listens. When she brought him home that Thanksgiving, I saw what she meant. Adrian was kind, respectful. He washed dishes like he belonged in our kitchen. And most importantly, he looked at my sister as though she carried the world in her eyes. They married beneath ancient oak trees, Spanish moss swaying like a blessing. As Elena stood radiant in lace, she whispered, "I'm happy, Maya, really happy." And I whispered back, "Then I'm happy too." For a while, she lived the dream we once whispered about. Sunrises on the porch, laughter, a secure life. But then the storm came, not from the sky, from inside Adrian himself. A sudden illness, incurable. I drove through the night to hold Elena's hand as she watched her husband fade. His last words to me were simple. Take care of her. A month later, he was gone. At the lawyer's office, we learned Adrian had left Elena everything, $40 million in assets, their home, and shares in his family's company. Her hand crushed mine as she whispered, "I don't want this without him." I told her the truth. He wanted you safe. But I also knew money is never just a blessing. It's a curse waiting to be claimed. And it didn't take long for that curse to find us. It began with a yacht. It gleamed at the dock, all polished decks and chrome railings, a world away from anything in our story. Elena gripped my hand, eyes glowing. Just us, Maya, like when we were kids. The captain introduced his crew. Miles, the technician, and Derek, a young deckhand. They were polite enough, but something in their eyes unsettled me. We left the marina on a clear morning. The ocean stretched wide and endless. Elena stood at the bow, braids whipping in the wind, laughter spilling into the waves. For the first time in months, I saw her smile like the girl she used to be. But by the second evening, clouds built heavy on the horizon. The captain said it was a passing storm. His knuckles on the wheel told another story. By dawn, the ocean had turned feral. Waves rose like walls, slamming the hull. Elena's nails dug into my arm. "Maya, I can't." "Hold on," I told her, dragging her below deck. My own voice shook, but I couldn't let her hear fear in it. Then came the explosion, a deafening blast from below. Miles shouted, "Engines are gone. We can't steer." The vessel lurched. Windows shattered. Water surged in. I forced a life jacket onto Elena, clutching her hands. "No matter what happens, don't let go." Her tear-filled eyes locked on mine. She nodded. Then the wave swallowed us. I fought the sea, screaming her name into the chaos. Debris floated. A chair, a rope, but no sister. I dove until my lungs burned. Nothing. Hours blurred into cold darkness. By the time the Coast Guard found me, I was clinging to a splintered board, whispering her name like a prayer. When they told me no one else had survived, something inside me broke. 2 days later, my parents came to the hospital. Denise wore her church scarf. Richard wore his old jacket. They looked like grieving parents. But I knew better. Their questions were too sharp, too precise. Did the radios fail completely? Did anyone see Elena go under? Not grief. Calculation. A week later, the Coast Guard recovered a body, too decomposed to recognize but matching the timeline. DNA would take months, but my parents pushed for a funeral anyway. "Let her rest," they insisted. So we buried a coffin I wasn't sure contained my sister. And that's when my phone buzzed. "I'm alive. Don't trust our parents." What happened after this message, how I met Elena in hiding, how we uncovered the sabotage, how we found out our parents had taken out an insurance policy worth millions, would change everything. It would end with a courtroom, gasps echoing as my sister walked in alive, and the truth crashing down on the very people who raised us. But I'll pause here, because this story isn't just about betrayal. It's about survival, about two sisters who refused to let storms, whether made of water or greed, tear them apart. The moment that message lit up my phone, my world cracked open. I slipped away from the cemetery before anyone noticed, rain soaking me to the bone. I needed answers, and fast. That night, I replied, "Where are you?" Minutes later, another message came. "Safe. Can't say more. Meet me tomorrow. Old train depot. 10 a.m. I didn't sleep. My mind replayed every memory of my sister. Her laugh, her tears, her hand gripping mine when the ocean swallowed us. Could it really be her? Or some cruel game? At dawn, I drove to the depot. The place smelled of rust and dust, sunlight cutting through broken windows. My heart pounded. Then, from the shadows, she stepped out. Elena! She was thinner, bruises along her arms, but those eyes, my mirror, were unmistakable. I ran. We collided in a hug so fierce it stole my breath. "They tried to kill me," she whispered. "It wasn't an accident. Mom and Dad." Her voice broke. "They sabotaged the yacht." I staggered back. "No, that can't be." But it could. I thought of their strange questions, their rush to bury a body. My parents hadn't just failed us, they had sold us to greed. Elena explained. She'd been pulled from the wreck by fishermen. When she regained consciousness, she overheard men saying someone had paid to make sure she disappeared. That's when she knew it was family. We went to the police, but money talks louder than truth. Our parents denied everything, painted Elena as delusional. The case went nowhere, until Elena revealed something they hadn't counted on: Adrian's will. The inheritance transferred only if she was proven dead. And guess who had pushed hardest for the funeral? Richard and Denise Brooks. With lawyers and evidence, we forced the case to court. I'll never forget the silence the day Elena walked into that courtroom, alive and unbroken. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My parents' faces drained of color. The judge's gavel came down hard. Fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder. They were led away in handcuffs while Elena and I clung to each other, trembling with both fear and relief. In the weeks that followed, we grieved, not for parents lost to prison walls, but for the parents we never truly had. The ones who traded love for money. But we also healed. We sat on Elena's porch watching sunrises, just like we once dreamed. She read from her journals. I fixed her garden gate. For the first time since childhood, peace didn't feel like a lie. And every time she smiled, I remembered the stones I once drew flowers on, when she thought Santa had forgotten us. I realized then, I hadn't just saved her life on the riverbank all those years ago. I had saved us both. Because no matter the storms, no matter the betrayals, we were still standing. Two sisters, two survivors, bound by blood, by love, and by a truth no one could bury. Now I want to hear from you. What would you have done if your own parents turned against you? Could you forgive, or would you walk away forever? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because I love hearing your perspective. And if this story touched you, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story of betrayal, survival, and redemption. And before you go, let me know where in the world you're watching from. I read every single comment, and I love seeing this community grow across the globe.